must clarify, as your campaign had tried to do, and now you appear to be distancing yourself from.
Everyone's saying the same thing out loud now. The Minnesota Nice mask finally slipped, and when it did, Tim Walz didn't just bristle, he blew. Here's the headline you clicked for, right up top. After Megyn Kelly pressed him on the image he sold for years, and the controversies his critics won't let go, Walz lost his cool on camera.
That is not the way the law is written. Look, I've given
but
this.
how?
I've given this advice on a lot of things, that getting involved, getting engaged, that's been misread, and it was fact-checked at the last.
And turned a calm and steady persona into a full-tilt pressure cooker. That happened. And the shock isn't that a politician got angry. It's that the guy whose whole brand is composure melted like a discount candle under studio lights. If you've ever wondered what it looked like.
Get to Tim Walz, who, just when you think no one's sitting at this table, neither she nor the big white blanket, can embarrass themselves any further, he does. She asks him, to her credit, about the carrying the weapons in war, which we know is a lie. He never served in war. He's been stealing valor for quite some time. And take a listen to this answer.
You said that you carried weapons in war, but you have never deployed actually in a war zone. A campaign official said that you misspoke. Did you?
Well, first of all, I'm incredibly proud. I've done 24 years of wearing the uniform of this country.
Looks like when a carefully crafted narrative hits a wall of follow-up questions, this is it. And it's messier than anyone in his camp wanted you to see. Why does this matter now? Because if your pitch to Midwestern voters is,
get up in the morning and you doom scroll through things, and although I will say this, the last few days you woke up thinking there might be news. Just saying. There will be news sometime, just so you know, there will.
I'm the level-headed adult in the room. You can't short-circuit the moment the room gets loud. Reputation is currency. Perception is ballast. And in a cycle where every swing state dad at the grill and every suburban mom at the carpool line is deciding who feels steady, the guy who fumes on air hands his opponent.
You've got Tim Walz. Okay, Jen Psaki, she's a talking head, whatever. But Tim Walz was recently the vice presidential candidate on the Democratic ticket. Maybe you'd expect a little better, a little higher in terms of the rhetoric. You would be disappointed. Here is SOT 27.
It's the only clip they need. I've combed the moments, the quotes, that's not how the law is written. The debate fact checks that won't stop trailing him like a storm front, and the pattern isn't subtle. Expectations on one side, reality on the other, and a widening gap in between. Here's what we're going to...
Here's the capper. He's as radical as we can get on the trans and children issue. He is Gavin Newsom with white hair. He signed an executive order that says the state can take your child away from you if you don't, quote, affirm their gender identity, and make sure they can get access to puberty blockers, cross-sex hormones, and surgeries, chopping off their healthy body parts. That's as radical as we have anywhere.
Unpack, and I'm going to pay off all of it. 1. The service record line that keeps resurfacing, carried weapons in war, and why the walkbacks haven't cooled it off. 2. The policy fights that animate his harshest critics. Abortion
were disgusting, but J.D. Vance was a vision. And Tim Walz really did indeed look like the bumbling knucklehead he said he was.
Care after attempted abortions and Minnesota's posture on youth gender medicine, and how the Minnesota Nice brand clashes with the way those critics describe the outcomes. 3. The media dynamic that works when the questions are gentle and collapses when a fall.
The left celebration of violence. Here's another soundbite. This one is still Tim Walz, but it's on Gavin Newsom's podcast too.
Follow-up lands. Along the way, we'll hit the there will be news chirp, the knucklehead moment, and the way a grin turns into gritted teeth when the curtain is pulled back. I'll keep the tone sharp, the timeline clear, and the stakes simple. When pressure shows you, people believe what they see. Start with the performance. For years, Walz has moved through...
People you disagree with, even, and you can't just dismiss people.
How do you fight it?
And well, this notion of
I think I could kick most of their ass. I do think that if they wanted to. I know I can go wrong, but I don't know if we're going to fall into that place where we want to. Okay, we challenge you to a WWE fight here.
Minnesota politics, like the affable principal at the school assembly, hands folded, voice even. Golly, cadence calibrated for comfort. It's the substitute teacher charm. Call me Tim. Let's keep it friendly, no need for fireworks. That persona wins you soft interviews and warm introductions. It does not survive a cross-exam with receipts. When Kelly flipped on the fluorescent lights and asked the questions his team would rather rephrase, the smile turned stiff and
This is everything we need to know. First of all, Minnesota schools have dropped from 7th in the nation to 19th under his gubernatorial reign. He wants driver's licenses for all illegals. He wants free tuition for all illegals. He wants free healthcare, has provided, not just wants, has provided free healthcare for all illegals. And as I said in the intro, free is not free. He wants to make Minnesota a sanctuary.
sentences turned jagged. That is not the way the law is written wasn't a confident debunk. It sounded like a man swatting at a hornet he hoped was just a fly. You could see the heat rise. You could feel the room shrink. And you could hear between the umps and the look, I've given this advice filler, the sound of a brand fraying, because the second best point, the one that grabs you by the collar right away, is the simple visual truth. He doesn't handle confrontation well. When someone refuses to pretend the set is a living room and the script is real life, the posture collapses. Watch closely, and you see the tells. The laugh that doesn't reach the eyes. They're just saying, there will be news, quip that reads as look, I'm still in control of the moment promise. The defensive pivot to family or classroom or my record speaks for itself. When the question is about the specific line he spoke, the specific change he made, the specific claim under dispute. A steady leader absorbs the hit, answers the question, and moves on. A shaky one tries to outrun it with warmth. That works until it doesn't. And when it doesn't, the nice turns brittle, the cadence turns chippy, and the public sees the person behind the persona. Once you see that, you don't unsee it. Now the strongest point, the one every critic points to with a neon arrow, sits at the collision of rhetoric and record. On the military line, he once said he carried weapons in war. He did not deploy to a war zone. That discrepancy doesn't vanish because a staffer chalks it up to a misspeak. In politics, words are chisels. If you carve yourself into a certain shape, you don't get to sand it down later because the gallery noticed. He rightly reminds people he wore the uniform for 24 years. That service is honorable. But the issue isn't whether he served, it's how he framed that service when it suited the moment. Critics call it embellishment, even stolen valor. His defenders call the criticism bad faith. But the on-air answer, pride in service, a detour into classroom talk, a heavy sigh about personal attacks, never directly meets the line as said. That's the gap. Expectation. Crisp clarification. Reality. Emotional reroute. And every time that loop repeats, the clip rewinds on social feeds and the trust meter flickers on policy, the clash is even louder. Opponents say that under Walz, Minnesota became a haven on youth gender medicine, aggressive affirmation, an executive posture that prioritizes access to puberty blockers and cross-sex hormones and legal signals that, in their telling, could put parents who hesitate at odds with the state. They use phrases like sanctuary and paint pictures of custody fights as policy outcomes. His camp calls those depictions distortions. But politically, pictures matter more than footnotes. Then there's abortion. From 2015 to 2023, a span critics bring up because of later changes, state records show babies were born alive after attempted abortions. Opponents argue that repealing certain statutory requirements erased clarity around immediate life-saving care. Supporters say medical ethics and other laws already govern those situations, and that opponents are fear-mongering. On stage, Walz's line, "That is not the way the law is written," should have been followed by the calm, exact explanation that takes the air out of the outrage. Instead, the exchange turned hot, the facts got drowned in friction, and the clip that survived was the temper, not the text. Expectation, steady adjudicator of a hard question. Reality, red-faced exasperation that plays like, why won't you just take my word for it? Zoom out, and the pattern isn't subtle. Persona first, precision second. Image first, ironclad proof later, maybe. That's why the "there will be news" morning chirp lands so off-key. It's a wink that sounds like orchestration, not leadership. It's the TV host energy, stay tuned, something big is coming, when what people want is the steel-spined patience of a grown-up. The same formula pops up on schools, where critics hammer the slide from top 10 to teens on national comparisons during his tenure and argue his answer is to layer more ideology and more spending on a foundation that's cracking. It shows up on immigration, where he's cast as the governor who greenlights driver's licenses and benefits for people here unlawfully. His defenders emphasize human dignity and workforce realities. His detractors emphasize incentives and costs. In each case, the debate is real, and adults can disagree. But the thread tying the viral moments together is composure. The minute the follow-up arrives, the minute someone says, "Hold on, your brand says X, but the outcomes look like Y," the emotional thermostat spikes, and that's where Megyn Kelly becomes less antagonist and more instrument. She didn't invent a secret. She flicked on the light. When she pressed the service record phrasing, you could see the circuitry overload. When she poked the policy contradictions, the veneer went from matte to glossy, the sheen you get when someone sweats an answer. The best